Right, let's get on to the election campaign. Let's just discuss this "I'm not going to work beyond 6 p.m. claim by Keir Starmer.
Well, God help if it's 5 minutes to midnight, because Keir Starmer will say, I've got my pyjamas on, I can't answer the phone.
Bill, this is a remarkably naive thing for him to say, isn't it?
Hold on, put it in context. He talked about Friday evenings, 1 day a week, and of course, if there was an emergency, he would work beyond 6 o'clock. But you know what? I think when he said, working 24/7 isn't the best way to get results, I think that will chime with a lot of people. And, there ought to be some time, at least once a week, protected for him and his children. But he's going to be working 70, 80, 90 hours a week, of course.
Well, the impression was, it wasn't just a Friday night. The impression was that he was going to stop after 6 p.m.
It was explicitly just Friday week.
No, he talked about Friday night separately, because he says, on Friday night I always spend with my family. No one's got any problem with that. But the reality is, Prime Minister, it's a 24-hour job. It is a 24/7 job. You've got crises coming to you every minute. We're living in a world with Russia and Ukraine war. We've got problems in the Middle East. This isn't someone who can just say, I'm sorry, I'm having a cup of tea at 6 o'clock. It's just crazy.
But Robert, that's not what he's saying. Look, this is a guy who throughout his working life has worked extraordinary hours, and he will carry on doing that as Prime Minister.
Has this campaign all been a bit unedifying? We had today the Labour battle bus. It's got these pillowcases with Rishi Sunak's face on them. You don't want to be waking up next to this come July the 5th. We've had one candidate referring to reform and equating them with Nazis. It's all getting a bit silly, isn't it?
I don't think this campaign is any different to any other campaign that I've been involved in. I think
don't the public just get switched off by these tactics?
I think the public often say you're all the same, and they don't like it. I completely get that, but it does go on. It's inevitable. But I do think there are clear messages, and there is a clear choice in this campaign. If you want lower taxes, if you want to get the Rwanda thing through to stop the boats, then people can vote Conservative. And otherwise, if you want higher taxes, a tax on your pensions, fuel duty going up, something I've campaigned for all my previous parliamentary career, then vote Labour.
Bill, this is the trouble with Labour, right? When we have shadow ministers in here, Pat McFadden was in on Sunday, the guy who's coordinating the campaign. They cannot rule out tax rises on people or things or wealth other than working people. This is the problem. He's like, we've got no plans to. And I say, you're not going to rule it out, though. So there is a degree of jeopardy, even though they're doing this whole Ming Vase strategy.
Let me come on to that. Let me just push back at Robert. Net migration 3 times higher today than it was under the last Labour government, and the highest tax burden since the Second World War under this government.
Right.
That's what people are reacting to.
Net migration was coming down over the past year. We know why the tax burden has gone up, because we spent £450 billion on COVID, which the Labour Party supported at the time. But now, since then, we've been reducing tax by cutting the national insurance.
Let Bill come back in on the tax point.
The thresholds are still frozen until 2028.
You're not going to reverse them.
Are you going to reverse them?
No, because we're inheriting the worst fiscal inheritance of any government that we've seen. But in terms of the tax claim, we've made it abundantly clear: no increases to national insurance, VAT and income tax.
Yeah, we know what you're not going to tax.
Beyond
but
that,
what are you going to tax?
Beyond that, it would be irresponsible to make commitments that you can't necessarily guarantee. We've seen that with the Tories. Look at what they said at the last general election, and then completely repudiated it.
Labour can't guarantee that taxes won't rise on things other than working people, whatever that might be.
All our programme has been properly funded, and we don't need to raise taxes to deliver it.
But nobody can answer this question.
Why don't we just say,
the economic growth record of the last Labour government was hugely better than this government. That's how you generate investment.
We cut fuel duty by 5p. Labour are going to raise fuel duty. They've always raised fuel duty when they've been in government. They're going to tax our pensions. They've always taxed pensions.
The fuel escalator was introduced by the last one Conservative government.
The Labour Party voted against every fuel duty cut. We've froze fuel duty for all our time in office and cut it by 5p when Rishi was the Chancellor. The Labour Party are going to raise fuel duty. That's why they won't give a commitment.
Robert, you've got a long memory.
Tax our pension.
It was Ken Clarke who started the fuel escalator.
Who was it? That was a government a long time ago. Who was it who cut fuel duty by 5p? Which government was it that froze fuel duty every single year since 2010? Which party voted against all those fuel duty cuts? It was the Labour Party.
And which party has delivered the highest tax burden since the Second World War, amidst a cost of living crisis, and with living standards, real wages having gone up by just 3% under this government,
and which party,
compared to 27% under the last Labour government?
Which government faced the biggest crisis since the Second World War because it had to spend £450 £50 billion of the pandemic.
We all have a crisis. We had the World Banking crisis.
They did have to put up taxes during that time. The Prime Minister has absolutely acknowledged that. But since he's got the economy back under the right path, and we're cutting national insurance. We've already cut it by £900. We've increased the national living wage. We're going to cut pension tax. You're going to raise it.
Do you know what? If you think the economy is under control, that does not accord with people's lived
highest
experience.
Growth rate in Europe, 2% inflation.
Talk to people on the doorstep.
Tempted as I am to just nip out of the studio, have a cup of tea and a Kit Kat, and leave you to it. We have to leave it there. But we love a bit of red on blue. So thank you very much indeed.